As sort of a general philosophy, I really don't want to tell people how to live their lives. Appreciate people on all sides of the political spectrum, but what I want to do is work towards building a world where we produce fewer people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That's what I want to do. I don't want to wipe those people from existence as much as I loathe them, but I want to build a world where far fewer people are compelled to be that way and compelled instead to be kind and compassionate and generous.
Hello, and welcome to Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast bringing you voices and ideas from across our fierce and fabulous spectrum to transform our world. I'm your co-host, Shane Lukas, lifelong queer liberation and bodily autonomy activist, advocate expert, and owner of A Great Idea. I'm also your co-host for today's queer change-making journey.
And I'm Hunter, curmudgeon, elven troll, a hybrid blend that likes to live in the woods and yeah, I don't know what else. I change up my description every interview because you got to keep things spicy.
And spicy it is. And in this episode, we are talking to the magnificent Vic Knight. She's an engineer based in Greensboro, North Carolina, active in local outreach and advocacy. In addition to leading her employer's employee resource group, she serves on numerous boards throughout the area, as well as serving as a current member in the City Council's Transgender Task Force.
She was a keynote speaker at the Reese and Guilford Green Foundation and LGBTQ Center annual gala in Greensboro. We are so fortunate to have this awesome crusader to share her philosophy, wisdom, and lived experiences with us.
Welcome, Vicki.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, as I was honored to speak at the gala. It's all a bit overwhelming, honestly. I didn't really get into this to make any kind of a name. And honestly, that's, I don't know, something we could talk about later, but people that do that really, they kind of bother me a little bit. So, but I want to thank you all for doing what you do as well.
Well, I'll start with that. I stand in front of a room to give people keynote. That's amazing. Were you nervous?
Yeah, I was plenty nervous, but I had practiced it a lot. So I wasn't nervous about, remember what I was going to say. I'm always nervous about my vocal presentation. And I was nervous about how the talk would be received, but it was very well received. I was very happy.
What keeps you calm?
As I mentioned, I had my kids there to support me and my amazing partner, Liz. And they have always encouraged me. And I also had a fairly large group from Corvo. So you mentioned I started the employee resource group there called IQ. And through that work, it's been one of the highlights of a nice technical career. One of the highlights has been helping a fairly big company direct some of its funding to local organizations. And one of the groups that we sponsor is Guilford Green. So we had a fairly large contingency there from Corvo, who was also supporting me.
That's amazing.
So how did you know where to start in your keynote?
I figured I'd start with a little bit of information about me, a little bit of background, because I don't think a lot of people know me. And I think even though Guilford Green is a wonderful supportive organization and everybody that supports it is an ally, I think there are always things that a trans person can divulge that will give allies information that will help them be better allies. So I just talked a little bit about my life and the goals that I had. And it just seemed fairly natural to start there.
Well, I heard you got a standing ovation. How did that feel?
That was pretty amazing. One of the major donors got up and on stage and gave me a hug. I think he donated like $5,000 in my honor. It was very touching. I didn't expect that at all.
Do you think we get room to celebrate? Do you feel like you get opportunities to celebrate sharing your story? That's something in the local community that feels like it's possible?
Well, that's what a great question, comment. Yeah, I intend to engage with PFLAG. Talk to Inez. He would like me to come speak to the PFLAG chapter. But yeah, that's a great point. I've also spoken to the IQ group at Corvo. Yeah, I don't know. To me, I want to celebrate who I am, but I don't want to overdo it and say, hey, look at me. I'm not really that. As you can imagine, me and a lot of other trans people are very uncomfortable being in the spotlight, but it is nice to have some celebration, have that be acknowledged.
Joy is so critical. I know, Hunter, you're a big advocate of joy and finding space for joy. Are there ways you coach joy in yourself? And because the journey in speaking and being out in front of people and engaging, and again, sharing that story, which is a gift, it takes a lot of energy. So part of that is I got to bring some of that joy home and replenish it. Are there things that you do to help replenish that?
Yeah, I enjoy a lot of time with my partner, Liz. She's been a wonderful counterpoint to me. There are some things about the way each of us think. For example, I have what's called aphantasia. I cannot see images in my head at all. I don't know if you've heard of that or not, but Liz is the opposite, and we're opposites, but we're so compatible in some way. So that relationship is joyful. And my kids, I mentioned some of this in my talk at the gala. My kids have been my biggest cheerleaders. They've been supportive and loving. And I've been very fortunate in my career. I have a lot of privilege. I think maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, that gives me a lot of joy that I have the privilege that I can give back to the community.
That's awesome.
I also did mention this. I highlighted that in my talk in a couple of places, that it's so important to remember your joy. And with all the craziness that's going on now, one thing I said was, don't let them steal your joy or hijack your passion. It's very important to keep that.
I really do appreciate you bringing up the topic of privilege, because I know the marginalizations that we exist in and our identities, that it is important to also acknowledge that maybe we do have privileges in some capacity. So do you feel your journey as a trans woman and as a queer person has informed and impacted your vision? And also, how do you utilize those privileges to influence that?
I'm wondering, so were you at the gala? Because you're hitting on a lot of stuff that I actually talked about.
I talk about privilege all the time too, and the intersections that I live in. So I love to have these conversations.
So yeah, one thing I had mentioned was that I came out in 2015, and I feel like I am so much more self-aware now, and I'm in the driver's seat of my own life like I never have been before. It's been an awakening experience for me. And I mentioned that to folks, but don't let anybody tell you that the transition is not an amazing, powerful, wonderful experience if you're compelled to do that. But yeah, it has made me appreciate the privilege that I had, which before I was Vicky, I was a white guy. So, and there is a lot of privilege that comes with that. But I've realized that, and I've built upon that after I transitioned. And as I mentioned, I want to continue my tech career, and I've gotten some nice technical advancements since I transitioned. So I want to keep that going, and largely by way of keeping access to the privilege so that I can spread that around. I've realized, especially since I came out and started working with Triad Health Project and Gilbert Green Foundation, how critical it is, and how many very important services and needs there are that are only met through generosity, and people using the privilege that they have.
I think it's powerful that you have shared your experience and your insights across different organizations at different places. If you had one key goal, if you had one thing that you were going to say, this is like when I'm making my decisions about where to spend my time, how to enact that privilege, how to participate in the communities that I'm in, what is the sort of goal in mind that you have? If you were to sum it up in a few sentences, that the change that you want to see happen.
The change that I want to see happen, wow. As sort of a general philosophy, I really don't want to tell people how to live their lives. So I appreciate people. I appreciate people on all sides of the political spectrum. But what I want to do is work towards building a world where we produce fewer people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Really, that's what I want to do. I don't want to wipe those people from existence as much as I loathe them, but I want to build a world where far fewer people are compelled to be that way, and compelled instead to be kind and compassionate and generous.
So what do you think is facilitating the generosity gap? Like, why do you think people are feeling less? I guess, or do you feel people are less generous than they were before? Or do you feel like that's changing? Like,
I think we're in an odd place in America, and that's been a thing that's been both uplifting to see how much generosity there is. As I've worked more closely with charitable organizations, I've realized how much charity there actually is. And the infuriating thing is that we actually need that in the United States. So other countries, they don't need that because their entire government is around supporting everybody and not just the privileged.
So I know that there's, in a lot of these topics that we're talking about, especially when it comes to the support, and a lot of it coming from donors or from in kind, and how that connects with our community and the places that we exist in. So Do you feel connected to community in this moment? And are you feeling any kind of like support or friction from the larger LGBTQ spectrum?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because one of my goals, and you asked about goals, and that was a very broad, hopeful. But another goal I have is I know there is friction in the LGBTQ community, even here in Greensboro. And one of the things that I want to do is break that down and get collaboration among the various organizations. They all have laudable goals. They're all filled with amazing people that want to do the right thing, and we all have the same goal in sight. There's drama that comes up. I would like to work around that. So the work that I've done with especially Guilford Green is towards that end, trying to improve collaboration. And I think Impact Greensboro, which is the organization that puts on Greensboro Pride, is doing an amazing job of that as well. We really have broken out this year. They're really reaching out, expanding the organization. I love the work that's going on. I want to be a part of that.
Awesome. I mean, it's powerful again that you're so engaged across the different communities. But many people are trying to figure out like, well, how do they show up? Like, how are they able to make time to be in community and engaged? Like you said, there is definitely a need across organizations. Like, what are ways that people can think to show up better or to show up differently? Because as some people are worried about time, some people may not have a lot of resources. What are different ways that people can show up?
People can show up in their everyday life by, if somebody makes an offhand comment, they can not ignore it and let it go past. You can say, hey, not very kind to say that. People can show up to volunteer, not just for LGBTQ organizations, but for one of the organizations that IQ engages with is Out of the Garden here in Greensboro, which provides meals for folks who are food insecure. Any organization like that will tend to build community.
I love that.
Honestly, the Greensboro is an oasis in North Carolina. There's a few cities that are wonderful. Greensboro is one of them. Top of my list. That's why I moved here. But even in Greensboro, there are not that many exclusively queer spaces. So what I've found is you have to go outside of the queer spaces and meet with allies, with people who can be allies, to build the community. And a lot of times, we talk about this in some of our board meetings. There are people who are not out of the closet, but if they know that there are other folks out there that want to reach out to them and have a need or can provide a service or even just companionship or encouragement, the more folks you get in contact with that know who you are, you're really your true self, the more folks I think have an ability to engage in community.
I love that. And it made me think about like in the ways that are the little subliminal messages, like how we queer code with one another. Yeah, I just had this at a grocery store earlier today where I was like, I saw somebody that had a little rainbow hat on and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like, am I showing up as queer? And how do I like, yeah. So I just love that where you're just like, where people may be not in their full self or their full awareness of who they are, or they can't be open about who they are. And how do we show up in that? And how do we allow others to know that they can show up in that, at least in our private presence?
Absolutely. It's wonderful. I had a conversation just like that yesterday at the grocery store as well. It was just an open conversation. And it just sometimes just showing up and being who you are, people will open up. And the cashier had told me she was hoping to marry. She proposed to her girlfriend and they were hoping to get married, but she was putting off because, I don't know, somehow the conversation came up and I told her I just come from the protest. And she's, what protest? And the conversation went on from there. So I think it's being authentic about yourself and not hiding who you are, and also being willing to talk to people. And I'm fairly introverted, but through transition and realizing the needs that are out there, I'll just sort of have to try and push through it.
That's powerful. I love that. I would say also compliment, just sometimes a nice compliment when you see somebody who is sort of showing up in a public space, even if they're doing it in a nice way where they have a little pin or just some way that you could tell they're a member of community or an ally. It's just nice to be like, love the shirt, love the hat. Hey, it's great to see you. But just to me, I try to go a little bit more out of my way, especially in environments where you do see more closeted people, or it's not typically, again, in New York, it probably doesn't feel like it's as necessary, but in a lot of the country, it is really good to be like, hey, I see you and I celebrate you. This is a really great moment. I know we're going to take a little break right now. We're going to back in less than a minute. Please don't leave us because we're just getting warmed up with our conversation with Vicky Knight. See you in a minute.
Welcome back. This is Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast, and I am your host, Hunter, and I'm here with activist and organizer, Vicky Knight. So before we went on the break, we were talking about ways that we show up in our everyday lives as queer folk, and even just the nuanced ways that we may find ourselves in conversations with people. So I want to lead into this question of, what would you say is the goal of representation, and why do you feel like it's so important to you?
I think wow, that's a big question. The goal of representation for me anyways is so Liz and I had gone through some stuff where we looked at how we're compatible. And one of those things is we have common values. And one of my strongest values is authenticity. So for me, it's very important to be authentic. So that's one of the things I do, is present myself authentically and talk to people authentically, honestly and frankly. I think it's important that we do that all the time, whether we're in a queer space or not.
Well, to create spaces for authenticity, right? You are an inventor. And one of the things you invented at Corvo was your employee resource group. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There was no overt outreach at Corvo or any kind of queer LGBTQ, or really no diversity outreach at the company. Although the company was never, they were always supportive, no matter how. I think I was probably one of the oddest people there before I transitioned. Yeah.
So I have to ask, so sidebar, what is your favorite invention? What's the favorite thing that you've invented?
IQ has to rank up there with one of my favorite inventions, but there's also some technical things that I've worked on at Corvo that, after I transitioned, actually, that I'm very quite proud of. They have to do with, they're critical trade secrets, but they have to do with impedance matching. You know what that is?
No idea.
Teach us.
Resistance is in a wire, right?
I think so. It's what stops the electrical current from moving forward, right?
Yeah. So when the current is alternating, it's you represent that resistance by a complex number. And the way the field alternates, it's a complicated math problem involving a whole bunch of linear algebra. So I worked with some of the equations there and came up with a novel way to do impedance matching, because what I do is I create systems to test semiconductor chips at my job. And impedance matching is a very challenging thing to do in production tests, because we test every single chip that we ship out. And it's critical that we test it the same way. It's going to end up in a phone or a computer. So yeah.
I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. I mean, again, like it's again, I think when we think about technology and science, just the idea of inventing is really powerful, but also being in the company and creating a space, as we talked about before, with representation is really powerful. Are you seeing the landscape either with other companies that you're seeing in community, especially as you're on these boards and these councils? Are you seeing companies change or adjust the way that they're including conversations around queer identification, or again, other ERGs, right? Other employee resource groups as well. Are you seeing some of that shift?
Oh, absolutely. There's a couple other nice employee resource groups at Corvo, but a lot of tech companies have, and I talked about this. So one of the things that we sponsor is a hackathon in Chapel Hill called Pearl Hacks. And it is at UNC Chapel Hill and is targeted towards women and gender nonconforming people. So I go there, and I was fairly surprised that there's a lot of computer science and data science students there. And most of the sponsors before Corvo came on were financial institutions. And that's just where they looked, because that's where they thought all the job opportunities were. But I told them, no, tech companies have wised up to be competitive, globally competitive. Tech companies have to cast the widest net they possibly can to attract all the talent, all the best talent. They cannot restrict it to a small number of demographics. So yeah, I've noticed a big shift in especially tech companies, Corvo included in that, in how we recruit and look for employees, and a lot of the policies that have come about that they've written recently won't include that. Although we are a defense contractor, so we have to be careful about the diversity language, especially with the foreign administration. But they have done a wonderful job of navigating that and keeping, the important aspects of diversity alive, no matter what the language is.
So what about companies that are removing their support? how can we change that trajectory?
One thing I mentioned in my talk at the gala was I talked about Anita Bryant, and I don't know if you were there or not, but I had of course, the GIF. Tom Higgins hitting her in the face with a pie was a wonderful moment.
Yes.
But, that led to not just the pie in the face, but part of that movement was, she was the spokesperson for Florida Citrus. And there was a very effective boycott of Florida Citrus that was a result of her horrible anti-gay activism and the backlash against it. So I think boycotts are a very effective way. Even they're always, I think, informal, especially at our things that we're interested in boycotting, but they've been very effective. I mean, look at Tesla, it's tanked. Target is suffering. It's rolled back their initiatives. Yeah.
When you mentioned Anita Bryant, it reminded me, so I love Golden Girls. I've been watching the Golden Girls since I was a little kid. And there was an episode, because it's in Florida, in Miami, and there was a moment where an obviously gay man, because he was very flamboyant. This is in the 80s when they're doing the stereotypical queer voice. And he looks at Dorothy Spornak and he goes, "Excuse me for trying to live Anita Bryant." And yeah. So even though I did not grow up with seeing Anita Bryant get pied in the face, I sure enough have that moment like encapsulated in my memory because of the influence of Golden Girls.
I'd love to share that GIF with you. It's great. Or GIF, sorry. You all hear it?
Either, yeah.
People insist.
I've seen the video. I have seen the video where she got pied in the face, and it was just like
the gray moment.
Yeah. The theme song from Curb Your Enthusiasm always plays in my head whenever I would see that.
So being seen in, one thing you've demonstrated in your work, Vicky, is that being seen in many aspects of life is powerful. So you might not know this, but I also identify as a humanist and among humanist philosophy. So when I found out that you've been published in the journal Essays in the Philosophy of Humanism, well, yes. So for people who might not be familiar with humanism, could you share a quick description of what that means?
So there's atheism and humanism. Atheism means I don't believe in any kind of, I guess I would call it a numinous presence. I don't believe in anything superstitious. But as a humanist, that is the philosophy of how I arrange and live my life and how I interact with people. Humans believe in the commonality of the human experience. And in my writings that I got published, I was trying to make the case that, hey, this is the intellectual basis for morality, which is how we interact with one another. So that's the basis of humanism, is constructing your own reasons for living your life the way you do, and finding your commonality with the rest of humanity.
It's incredibly powerful. Do you have a favorite article that you've written that we can all look up so we can all now search the web for it?
Well, it's under my dead name.
Got it. Maybe I don't know if you want to share the article, we'll put a link somewhere in case anybody wants to learn. But they can also learn more about it through the American Humanists, right?
I think it was the 2014 year for that journal. Yeah, it was very flattering because it's a peer-reviewed journal. There were a number of famous folks on the committee. I advocated for it. And honestly, I mentioned it was 2014, so that was part of my, hey, wake up and take control of your own life, be honest about who you are. That was the first aspect, was coming out as an avowed atheist and saying, yeah, I really don't believe in that stuff, but I think, it's important for us to be good people nonetheless, without I think what I call the baggage of a lot of religiosity. But yeah, after that, it was my transition in 2015, and coming out in 2015, and later transition, all linked together. Part of me being authentic and honest.
So you led into the next question that I was going to ask about with gender identity and your identities. And I think that folks contain multitudes. So I always like to use plurality when I'm talking about these things. But when it comes to your transition journey, how did your philosophical identity play into processing that?
Philosophically, I think it's important to be honest with oneself, acknowledge who you are, and be aware of your faults, your biases, become cognizant of things in your own personality that affect how you interact with the world. So to me, it was maybe a process of, I guess, maybe introspection, thinking about realizing how over my entire life, I always realized I was a little different, but I never acknowledged that. I always tried to hide it or squash it down or just ignore it. So I think if I had to pin it down, it would be, again, we talked about values and virtues, authenticity. I think it comes down to that. To be an authentic person, to be honest with myself and the world. I feel like I had to express myself as I am, Vicky.
I think it's powerful that you, again, model that authenticity as somebody who also shares that value and finds that authenticity is such an important component to the way that we show up, because it really helps people who may not have the confidence or feel secure in bringing their whole selves into the room. Sometimes like elevating that authenticity and like you said, saying there's so many dimensions. And Hunter, I love that you talked about kind of we contain multitudes, and that authenticity requires that we have those multitudes. So I'm curious, as you mentioned, Vicky, these sort of different journeys and kind of coming out in different ways, right? So for a lot of people who identify as non-faith participants, whether that's atheists, humanists, in those different circles, right? There's usually a coming out process there, a little bit of disclosure among communities in their own area. So I'd love to hear like what that process was like, and then how do you compare that a little bit with in terms of your gender identity journey, like how coming out in that context was. Did you feel like they were very different? Did you feel like they were similar? Could you share a little about that?
Well, yeah, it was fairly similar, and I think maybe even more anxiety inducing to acknowledge and come out and be open about being an atheist, because, that was a big disclosure. And, we're here in North Carolina, which is in the Bible Belt. And at the time I lived in Chatham County, which is fairly religious and not progressive area. And yeah, there were some of the local churches and some pretty ugly things written on their billboards. And yeah, I had a lot of anxiety about coming out as an atheist. But, I had always felt, I don't know, a little bit silly, like in church, reciting prayers and things. So to me, there was no way I couldn't. I had to do it. That process was similar. I had to disclose it to my family. I was married at the time with 2 kids. And my son was very interested in church. He actually thought he wanted to be a preacher. But, I was always honest with him from the time. He was old enough to understand, I think, by the time it matters. A lot of anxiety with that. And then, of course, the process of coming out as trans was similar. First divulged it to my family. I think maybe having gone through the process of coming out as an atheist prepared me a little bit better for coming out as bisexual and transgender. Not sure if that's a question.
Wow. Yeah. I'm marinating on that because I'm just like, like the different ways of just like slowly teetering out with, okay, how am I going to show up in this way? Let's test the waters a little bit in that way. Okay. I love that. So we need to take a pause here and take another short break, but we'll continue our conversation about Vicky's multi-layered work after a really short break. Please stay tuned to Power Beyond Pride.
Welcome back to Power Beyond Pride. I'm your co-host, Shane Lukas, and I'm here with my co-host, Hunter. And we are talking with the amazing Vicky Knight, and we have had such a great conversation. But now it is time for our rapid question. So we're excited. So the audience can get to know you better, Vicky. So are you ready to take this on?
Probably as ready as I will be.
All right. Well, the first question is going to tie. The first question is going to tie right into some physics. So, what A word defines the scientific study of sound used to determine the efficiency of engineering projects?
We're talking about acoustics.
Acoustics. Yes, it is. Boom. There we go. That's awesome.
What's the best pickup line you've used?
Oh my God, I'm a little neurodivergent, so I'm terrible at pickup lines. I can't even think of a single one. That's probably a pickup line right there. I'm terrible at pickup lines. How about that?
Hey, authenticity.
Honestly, it works. Before. That would pick, that's the authenticity. That would pick somebody up in a heartbeat.
So, Vicky, we are of a similar generation. So do you have a favorite Val Kilmer movie? We wanna remember Val. And do you happen to have a favorite Val Kilmer film?
Didn't he do The Saint?
Yes.
Yeah. I like
There
that.
we go. Awesome. I actually, it's a good one to go back and watch. I haven't seen that one in forever. I was thinking Top Secret. I'll be honest. I'm like a Top Secret.
Yeah, it's a good. He was also, didn't he do Jim Morrison?
Yes, indoors. He recorded, he did the vocals for, I think they said like 25 songs or something like that. Yeah, it was remarkable. I'm not even gonna lie. There was also a romance flick that he was in where he was blind and had surgery. I mean, it was corny, but I also had a thing for Val Kilmer back in the day. So,
well, what I just heard you say, Hunter, though, is that Timothée Chalamet can eat it because Val Kilmer did it before him in terms of recording those songs ahead of time. So kudos, Val.
I won't even get into. I won't even. Not even. Yeah, I'm not even gonna give him the airspace. No. So, an embarrassing moment you experienced in the past 6 weeks.
What was that?
I had a parking incident with my car downtown. I should have let the car can park itself. I should have let it park itself, and I didn't. And I was in a hurry, and I crunched the whole front of the car, just trying to parallel park. Yeah, so that was pretty embarrassing.
Oh my gosh!
Parallel parking is evil. We can all agree to that as a general rule. All right. So here's a trivia piece for you, Vicky. Who designed the trans flag?
Oh, dang! I should know that. I don't have that at my fingertips.
Not gonna lie, I had to look it up too. I know the flag, love the flag, but I did not know. Designed in 1999 by Monica Helms.
Yeah, who? Just looking at that very fact online and the visual memory thing, I just don't have it.
I mean, that's what Google's made for. But I appreciate that. Not only she was also a veteran, and she flew it in the first Pride Parade in Phoenix, Arizona in 2000. So that's awesome. So celebrating 25 years this year. I think that's also pretty awesome.
You know, my glasses, my bracelet.
I mean, the glasses are great, and there's a little pink tint in the hair, right?
But honestly, I'm loving, the coordination between the glasses and your hair. I've been living for it this whole interview.
Well, I'm also a color klutz, and I have to admit that my partner Liz has helped me a lot with color. She's hyper visual, like her mind is so cluttered with visual stuff, but she has a very good sense for color coordination. She's helped me a lot.
Awesome. So, what is a philosopher's take on why we exist?
On why we exist? I mean, that sounds like the purpose of life, and I think the purpose of life is to find meaning in our lives and to acknowledge that I can't take credit for this. I think I want to say it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, or it may have been Carl Sagan that said that what we are is the universe, the way the universe knows itself. So, purpose of life, I think, is to find our meaning.
I think that's beautiful. And my last question is just as deep: apples or bananas?
Definitely bananas.
Is there a reason? Is it just honestly, to me, it's easy. I'm lazy. I'm a lazy eater, so I want a banana. What is yours?
So I'm one of 7 children, and my parents weren't, bless my mother for that, were not able to mind us as well. So I would never grew up with a great sense of a lot of things. Like I was not really good at brushing my teeth, so my teeth were fairly weak. And I was eating an apple one time, and I bit into the apple, and I broke off my front tooth. So I have a little bit of an aversion to apples just because of that. I do a lot better now since I got braces. I didn't even have braces until I was almost 50. So, so I really appreciate my teeth now. But and even more so because the reason that I prefer bananas over apples.
I'm with you. It's amazing. Amazing. We got to know you more better, Vicky. I love that. So I guess our next question just has to be, what's next on your agenda?
Well, what's next on my agenda? Well, there's another technical ladder step that I'd like to make at Corvo. I'd like to become a principal engineer there. I'm working towards that. Yeah, I guess maybe a couple of steps. I'd like to expand my work with charities and local charitable organizations, and also continue to enjoy my life. Hope everybody remembers that. It's so important.
Hey, we're giving you a standing ovation right now, so we're loving it.
Thank you.
So where can people follow you? Do you have social media or anything that people can kind of check in on the progress?
I have a Facebook page that I'm fairly open about. Victoria Knight on Facebook. Yeah. Although I have to say,
So-
I'm a little bit careful about accepting friend requests, but everything I post is completely public because, again, I think it's important that we represent and we don't like restrict access. We didn't get into a lot of this stuff, but I think a lot of the problem with the way we are now politically is people are very siloed. And while it's important, I think, to not consume too much alarmist information that is completely antithetical to what you believe, it's important to at least be aware of it. And by that same token, I don't want to restrict things that I post to just my friends.
Well, and also you are so involved in local organizations that we can also stay in contact with you through those, right? So through Triad Health Project, Guilford Green in Greensboro, North Carolina. Look for your future keynotes.
Yeah, I actually, I was a little uncomfortable doing the Guilford Green thing. I've done plenty of technical presentations, but speaking in front of the gala at Guilford Green I was a little bit apprehensive. You asked if I was nervous. Yes, I was a little nervous, but I enjoyed it. And it was so well received. I'm be glad to share with other folks. Again, I don't want to seek the spotlight, and I don't want people to think that I'm seeking any kind of spotlight, but I would love to share with folks. Maybe start with PFLAG next.
Well, we definitely always have spotlights for you here. We are so excited to be able to spend this time with you. It's all we have for today's show, and you can learn more about Vicki, as she mentioned, on Facebook, as well as through the organizations that she's involved in, and honestly, through the show too. So we're excited. Thank you again so much, Vicki, for being here today. I'm Shane Lukas. You can find me at shanelukas.com and follow me through Shane Lukas on Blue Sky, as well as on LinkedIn.
And I'm Hunter. You can find me on my website at hntrphoto.com, and it links to my Instagram. And that's about it.
And I'm Vicki. I'm a little old, so I only have a Facebook page. So thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. I hope we can have you back again and to extend the conversations into some even more spaces. Yeah.
Remember to subscribe and get your friends to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride wherever you get your podcasts, and check out our site at powerbeyondpride.com, as well as following all of our socials.
Power Beyond Pride is a project from A Great Idea, a queer-owned design and content agency. Learn more about them at agreatidea.com. This episode is produced by Shane Lukas. Smita Sakar is the project developer. Our editor is Jared Redding, with support from Ian Wilson.
We are both part of this podcast host team, and we invite you to send in your questions and comments at powerbeyondpride.com. We look forward to queer change making with you together at Power Beyond Pride.